YouTube. What's up, guys? Marco Presco here. So I got a video about the two ways people get help, right? So you got self-reliance and government responsibility, right? And so that's the two ways people can escape hardship. For one, people have an individual responsibility to take control of their own lives because no one else is coming to save you, you know? You got to get up every morning, achieve your goals, work with what you have, work with the resources what you have, find out what things that are not good for you, what are the things good for you, and continue doing the good things and get rid of the bad things, right? And then two, there's a government and systemic help, right? Which the government, and these social systems exist for to help you, to benefit you, the people, and you have to it requires people to push them back and for them to be held accountable for them to work properly. That's why we got, these oligarchs and these rich people because they're the ones, you know, they're the ones pushing back and controlling the agenda and the people aren't. But we'll get back into that until later in the video, right? So it's not about, one or the other, right? It's about understanding like the balance between personal responsibility and systemic accountability. Well, is the two things that are needed to make ensure that everybody has a better life, right? So most people think the government isn't helping them, and others think that they just need to work harder. But if I told you both sides are missing the bigger picture, the truth is nobody, and I mean nobody, is coming to save you. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't, right? The system helps those who know how to work it. And if you don't, you're going to get left behind. So in this video, I'll break down the two ways people escape hardship. There's self-reliance and there's government action. And at the end of the day, you see why you need both, right? And so coming back to my point about no one is coming to save you, right? Even if they wanted to, they couldn't, right? There's well-meaning people out here, right, that cannot solve your problems for you, right? Your pastor can give you all of the advice in the world, but it's up to you to listen to what he says, right? Your mom could give you all the resources, all the love, and all the support, but it's up to you to do something with your life. People can give you all the advice in the world. There's all these YouTube channels, but it's up to you to figure out what are you going to do to get out your situation, right? They can support you, but ultimately they don't make the moves for you, right? There's plenty of examples of people who got it out the mud. You hear this story, right? So I'm gonna give you one. Damon John, founder of Fubu, right? Started his business, almost no money, right? He sold homemade clothes out of his mom's house. He didn't have a startup capital. He didn't have investors. He didn't have a trust fund. He just had a vision and relentless work ethic, right? He leveraged hip hop culture. He gave clothes to local rappers. He learned business on his own, and he made moves that adapted quickly. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar company, right? He didn't wait for grants, investors, or government support. He found a way to build what he had, right? And he worked with the system instead of expecting the system to work for him, right? And now this example, maybe you don't have access to local rappers. Maybe you don't have access to whatever you have. Everybody's situation is different, but it's not about the fact that he had these things. It's about what did he do? He just got up, he had an idea and he went hard at it. And that's what you have to do, right? This is what you have to do. Success isn't about luck. It's about awareness and decision making. You don't have to be the smartest, strongest, or richest person to win. The people that get ahead aren't necessarily special. They just see opportunities that other people ignore, right? They improve their skills instead of blaming lack of jobs. They network and ask for help instead of complaining about not having connections. They learn money management instead of saying the system is unfair, right? And so there are dangers of having a victim mindset, right? Acknowledging obstacles doesn't mean accepting defeat, right? And most people don't realize this, right? People who internalize struggle as permanent tend to stay stuck, right? You can acknowledge that there's these hardships in your life, but you still have to do something about it, right? There's people who are running marathons with one foot. There's people who are swimming with one arm. There's people who are doing these amazing features, right? Despite not having the ideal circumstances, right? And so you cannot wait for the perfect conditions or the right time or the right government policies, or you're never going to start, right? The government should help you, and it does help you in a lot of ways that you won't even realize, right? Because everybody benefits, right? You have the roads, you have the schools. These are all things like these roads help you get to point A to point B faster. Everybody's educated under the same system. You have PPP loans. You have tax, like the government helps out with taxes. I'm just saying, the government is not just about giving incentives to poor income people, such as food stamps and other things people in need. Everybody uses the government, right? So the government should help, and it does help, but it's not going to move fast enough to save you. There's a lot of bureaucratic issues with the government, and we all know that it's slow as hell, right? Because there's so many different groups, there's so many checks and balances, there's so many different levels to just get one thing done, right? And so self-reliance is the key. But saying just working harder ignores history and reality, right? Because nobody succeeds alone. There's invisible help everywhere, from public schools, infrastructure, financial regulation, tax breaks, right? And my point, the wealthiest people benefit from the system just as much as those on welfare, right? The difference, they know how to work it to their advantage, right? And so, for example, billionaires, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, right? They benefit from public education at some point, right? The government funds public K through 12 education, which is the first step in economic mobility for most people, right? Universities receive massive government funding through grants, subsidies, and research funding. For example, MIT, Harvard, and Stanford all get millions of dollars from federal research grants, yet people think their success is purely private, right? Infrastructure. Every company relies on government-built infrastructure to do business. Trucking, shipping, e-commerce could not exist without publicly funded highways, airports, and ports. Wall Street's entire stock market system is backed by federally regulated trading systems that prevent fraud and ensure efficiency, right? Financial regulations protect the wealthy. It's propped up by government institutions like the Federal Reserve and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, right? And the SEC, which prevents insider trading and fraud. It creates a system where the wealthy can safely invest, right? So flipping back on it to how it helps the working class, right? Public schools, scholarships, funding for low-income students changed lives. Programs like Social Security, food stamps, healthcare subsidies help people survive, which allows them to get on their feet, right? Historic examples: the GI Bill helped millions of helped millions of World War II veterans, mostly white veterans, buy homes and get degrees, leading to a massive, middle class boom. They basically got free houses, free education. If you have a free house and free education, one, the house is going to build wealth. Two, you're educated, you're going to get a high paying job, right? Civil Rights Act formed systemic changes that led to better job opportunities, right? Earned income tax credit, right? One of the biggest tools to lift working class families out of poverty, right? And so I'm trying to give an example of how the government affects everybody, right? Now, where the government fails and why you might think I don't need the government doesn't help me, is because many programs are underfunded, inefficient, or outdated, right? There's plenty of times where there's a policy that promises to give this person money, and then by the time it gets to the final decision makers who actually are in charge of implementing it, it's not even a good policy, right? Government bureaucracy often benefits those who know how to navigate it and leave out the most vulnerable, right? There's lengthy application processes, right? In which, there's sometimes the applicant might have to send multiple documents to prove eligibility, right? And it takes weeks or months for approval, right? Or there's like strict eligibility rules, right? Where there might be a program that, cuts off benefits too quickly if you're earning slightly more. I was talking this in my last video, but there's like a welfare trap where people are afraid of moving up and making more money because they lose out on welfare, right? Plenty of people don't know a lot of programs that exist, and that's one of the main problems, right? There's I don't know statistics, there's a lot of people that qualify for Medicaid, but there's so many people who never sign up because they don't know how to, or assume they aren't eligible, right? Small business owners don't know that there's different programs to exist that help them, become a small business, right? And the ones who do struggle to meet strict requirements or fill out complex applications are the ones who, get hold, to be honest. And so, it's not enough just to vote every 4 years and hope for change, right? You have to demand change and apply pressure, right? Applying pressure once every 4 years is not going to do nothing for you. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to get anything done. Like, imagine, that's just idiotic, right? Power is organized and not given, right? The rich, they influence policy through lobbying, right? So working class people, what are you doing? If the rich people have lobbying, what do you have, right? And so that has to be collective action. That's how you beat lobbying, right? The rich people are constantly, on the day trying to get their influence, trying to get their policies ran, right? While you're waiting 4 years to get a couple of policies that you want. You're behind the game, right? And this is where the working class people need to realize what we're getting wrong. So like in the past, we had like civil rights movement, right? Black communities didn't just wait for justice, they forced the government to act, right? We had workers' rights, right? Labor unions that fought for fair wages, benefits, safety laws, right? Healthcare reforms. programs, Medicare, Medicaid, right? These things were created because people demanded them, right? Local elections are more, they matter more than presidential ones, right? Because the president only has like, he only sets broad national policies, right? But your mayor, your city council, your district attorney, your school boards, those are the things that determine what you interact with every day, right? Policing, housing, schools, local services, right? The rent is too high. There's a statistic where you can't work a 40-hour job and afford a two-bedroom apartment, right? But if the rent is too high, that's because your city council decided zoning laws, which impact how many houses, apartments can be built, right? And that's supply and demand, right? If there's a low amount of houses, then the demand is going to be high. They could charge higher prices, right? Criminal justice system is unfair. The president has kind of nothing to do with that. Your local district attorney does, right? You complain about schools being underfunded, outdated textbooks, bad policies, right? Go to a local school board, right? Because these are the people who are deciding all this, not the federal government, right? And so you have to realize that these local people are the ones actually helping you, right? And there's many movements and organizations that are working to build this community level action, right? And it's way easier to build community action. It's easier to influence and make change in your community than the national level, right? For example, like a local politician is easier to pressure than a national leader, right? Because your local politician, your local mayor, they don't have a lot of power, and they have a few lobbyists protecting them, right? They don't have a lot of people supporting them, community movements can change laws in weeks or months. There's going to be something change in your city that you can make that change in a short amount of time. But if you want a policy to change that they have to enforce it over 50 states, that is a lot of work and a lot of people, right? But for example, the push for body cameras on police officers, right? That started in individual cities, and after the success, right, and after police shootings, right, locals pressured more than I think like 35 states to implement these body camera policies, right, to force people to be accountable for their actions, right, and then federal funding will follow, right. But it started off from a small city, individual cities, and then it branched out to 35 states, and I don't know now. I hope all 50 states have body cameras, but I don't know. Weed, a lot of people like to smoke, right? It wasn't federally legal at first, right? Colorado, Washington legalized it. They showed it could work and it wasn't too bad. After that, like a lot of states now, weed is legal, right? And that started from a small area and branched out to something bigger, right? And so you have to learn how to navigate these government resources and you have to take full advantage of these things, right? You have to know about these grants. You have to know about these tax benefits. You have to know about these welfare programs because they exist, but a lot of people don't know that they exist and losing out on money. And so you have to save yourself, right? That doesn't mean we stop fighting for better systems, but it's not about you don't have to have self-reliance, and you don't have to be independent and be not reliant on government help, right? Why not be self-reliant? Why not work with what you got at the moment, but also work to build something more, right? Does not seem like the best case, right? I'm not being dependent on the government, but they have a right to, help me out. So I'm gonna make sure I hold them accountable so they can help me out, right? And so, like, what are you waiting? Are you waiting for help, or are you making moves? Are you fighting for a system that actually works for people like you? And so, like, I just want people to think like, okay, does the government not do enough, or does the government do too much? Because if the government does too much, then are people just over reliant on them? And if they're over reliant on them, why are they over reliant on them? Why is it bad to over rely on the government? What is the relationship between the government and the individuals and the citizens, right? And realize that you need to do both, right? The government needs to be held accountable, and you need to do your part to, make sure that you're maximizing your potential, using your resource the best you can, educate yourself, and, try to hold these institutions accountable. So that's all I have. If you have any comments, questions, things that, I said that you want to add on to, or I could be wrong, have a debate with me. Appreciate everybody for listening, and hope you have a good day. Thank you.